Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kim Coble. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and welcome to Friday Digest. If you haven't joined us in the past, this is a half-hour or so conversation that we have with various people around the state that are doing wonderful work around justice and voting and environment and impact. So I am really pleased today to be joined by Morgan Drayton and also Eris Prince, and I'll be introducing these folks in a minute. But I wanted to also let you know that we are recording this. I want to let you know we're recording this so that we can show it on our website and you can share it with colleagues and friends. So that is going on. If you have a question you'd like to ask one of the panelists, use the question and answer box down at the bottom. You can see the two kind of quotation or conversation boxes, and that's click on that and we'll get it through. What we're talking about today is really timely and very important. We're going to be discussing the process of how you prepare a plan to vote. And you really do need a plan to vote. You need to be conscious about it and think about it. And also, we're going to identify ways to get involved in the voting process and the election process. So as I said, we've got some experts here with us. And let me start with Morgan Drayton. Morgan joined Common Cause Maryland in September of 2021. She manages outreach and engagement of key policy campaigns throughout the state, especially those around money in politics and voting rights. Prior to joining Common Cause Maryland, Morgan worked on a variety of policy issues ranging from police reform to immigration rights at all different levels of government. She completed her undergraduate studies from Salisbury University and went on to earn her law degree from the University of Baltimore School of Law. We are also joined by Eris Prince, who founded the Baltimore City Youth Voter Registration Committee her junior year of high school. Eris identifies a need in her community for more voter participation among younger people, especially at the polls in Baltimore City. She's passionate about political advocacy, civics education, and representing Baltimore City youth, both locally and regionally. She currently attends the University of Maryland, where she's continuing advocacy with her fellow students. So we have brought in the experts. And lastly, I want to introduce Neka Duckett-Randolph. Neka works for Maryland League of Conservation Voters. She's our elections campaign manager, and she'll be here too, sharing her experiences regarding voting and elections. So let me first start and turn it over to Morgan, who's going to has a presentation for us. Morgan?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Kim, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to Maryland League of Conservation Voters for hosting me tonight. Let me just share my screen. We'll get started. All right, so the 2022 general election and making a vote plan. The first thing I want to talk about are some important dates for anyone who's interested in voting in the general election. Some of these have already passed, as you'll see. The next one that's relevant is November 1st, and that's when all mail-in ballot requests must be received. So if you're interested in receiving a ballot in the mail to your home, you can go on the Maryland State Board of Elections website. They'll have a lovely form that you can fill out and return, and they'll be sure to get your ballot out to you by the deadline. And then October 27th to November 3rd is our early voting period. Even though the advanced deadline to register to vote has passed, you can still register and vote during this period as well. You have to bring a government issued ID and some form of like a bill, just that proves where you live. So you take all of that to your local board of elections and they will get you all set up to vote. And then the last relevant day is, of course, November 8th, election day, all mail-in ballots must be postmarked by this date or dropped into one of the official ballot boxes by 8 p.m. And if you're voting in person, as long as you're in line at your precinct by 8 p.m., you should be allowed to vote. And then if you have already returned your mail-in ballot and are just curious, checking on the status of either your request or your voted ballot, you can also go to that same State Board of Elections website. They have a handy dandy little tracker here on the bottom. If you just click that button, you'll be able to see where your ballot is in the process. Voter registration. Please, please, please verify that you are registered to vote and your information is up to date. Like I said, if you missed that advanced voter registration deadline, same-day registration is available during early voting and on election day. Like I said, go to an early voting center, take a government issued ID or like a utility bill, other government document with your name on it. And as long as you're not currently serving time for a felony conviction, you will have the right to register and to vote. And then just a little caveat, if you do update your voter registration at a vote center, you may be asked to cast a provisional ballot, but that ballot will still count. So making a plan, you really want to choose whether you want to vote using a mail-in ballot or if you're going to vote in person now. And once you decide, stick to that plan. That just makes it easy to make sure that you do get to cast your ballot this election. And just explaining why voters who request a ballot and then decide to go vote in person will be asked to vote on a provisional ballot. If you requested a ballot, the records that the State Board of Elections has will show that you requested that ballot, and they just want to make sure that you're not voting twice. So that's just a logistical thing. Once you make a plan on how you're going to vote, stick to that plan. So voting by mail, like I said, the request for mail-in ballot must be received by November 1st. I think that's in 8 or 9 days, so not a lot of time. Make sure if that's the way you want to vote, you return that form. I think this is the link right here. If you just copy paste that into your browser, that'll take you right to the form. You can fill it out and return it. Yeah, this is probably the most convenient way to vote. And also it gives you more time to do your research. And yeah, if you're voting by mail, make sure you don't wait. The deadline to return your mail-in ballot application is November 1st, but we also recommend mailing your ballot in no later than November 1st. So if you can do it earlier, we highly recommend that. There are also official drop boxes that are monitored 24/7. Ballots are picked up from those 2 times a day. And those locations are also on the State Board of Elections website. So find one of those and drop off your ballot early if you can. And then you can also request an electronic ballot that will come to you through your email. Those you need to have access to a printer. If you don't have a printer in your home, you can always access one at your local library. You'll need a return envelope and postage for those. So if you do have a mail-in ballot, ensure that you seal and sign the oath and return that hopefully before November 1st, but definitely by November 8th at 8 p.m., which is when all polls close. And then voting in person. If you do choose to vote in person, try to vote early. The early voting period is from October 27th to November 3rd, 7 to 8 p.m. You can go to any vote location during early voting. If you do choose to vote on election day, you must go to your assigned precinct polling location. So if you have your voting registration card, it should be printed on there. You can also check that through the State Board of Elections. And all in-person locations will have accessible ballot marking machines, language assistance, and just general assistance if you need that while voting. If you're in line at 8 p.m., please stay in line. You are able to vote. And if you do run into any problems and can't get the needed assistance from election officials, you can call 866-OUR-VOTE, which is our election protection hotline. I will be in our office serving as sort of the command center on election day, so your call will come straight through to us and we can escalate that to the State Board of Elections if necessary to get your issue resolved. And then these are just some things where if you see it, you definitely want to say something, call 866-OUR-VOTE or our Spanish line 888-VE-VOTA. If you see disinformation about the election on social media, such as telling people the election's been moved to another day. That's something you definitely want to report. Intimidating flyers or unnecessary police presence, the poll didn't open on time or it closed early. That type of stuff is the stuff that you would want to report to us, so we can ensure that it's resolved and everyone who wants to vote can. Yes, and that's the end of my presentation. So I guess we'll hold questions to the end.
Thank you, Morgan. And Eris, you want to go next?
Okay, great. Let's see. Alrighty, and I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty, so like Ms. Kim said, hi, my name is Eris Prince. I'm the founder of the Baltimore City Youth Voter Registration Committee. And then I'm going to skip through. So this is just a few things that I'm going to be talking about. Skipping through. So the importance of voting. I think every year we talk about, there's an emphasis on why we need to vote, but making sure to also talk about the importance of voting is it's necessary. So civics education teaches us the basic foundation of how the democratic government functions. As US citizens in a democracy, we have the power to directly elect representatives through exercising the right to vote. Civics education is vital in the classroom as it teaches students to be well-informed and engaged citizens. So as far as what will be on the ballot, on the state level in the state of Maryland, we're in a gubernatorial election year, which means our votes are going to be used to elect the next governor of Maryland. On the local levels, both in Baltimore City and in Prince George's County, the setup looks a little different. So in Baltimore City, along with the next governor, citizens will be voting on a variety of important roles such as city, state's attorney, clerk of circuit court, and then also our sheriff. In Prince George's County, it's more of a unique election year. So Prince George's County is under what's called a special election to fill a vacancy in the county's council in the 8th district. So here's a few steps and resources that are going to help you in the voting process. Step 1, obviously, if you haven't already registered to vote, please make sure that you're registered. And along with this, you want to make sure that you're doing your research to find candidates that you believe will best represent you. And you want to have just a pretty good understanding of the district roles and different positions that may show up on your ballot. So you want to be aware of that. So making sure to do your research beforehand is really a great way to go. And then step 2, based on where you live, whether you're in a county or Baltimore City, decide whether you want to be an in-person or vote by mail voter, whatever may work best for you. You want to create a checklist prior to the time of voting of things you may need, such as some form of ID and your voter registration card, if you have it through the mail. And then the third step, whether it be a parent, family member, or a friend, you don't want to be afraid to ask for help. All of our securities are resources, so if you need it, you want to reach out. We're here to help as a resource, so yeah, don't be afraid. So here are a few websites that you really want to refer back to, whether you're in Prince George's County, in the state of Maryland, or in Baltimore City. You really want to make sure that you're using your Board of Election websites as your first and sort of direct source for any voter related information, especially when it comes to deadlines, because things may change and you want to be aware of that. So using the Maryland State Board of Elections, Prince George's, and then Baltimore City Board of Elections is going to be your sort of main way to go. So here are a few voter registrations to be aware of. Like Morgan said, in-person early voting is going to be from October 27th to November 3rd. In-person voting on election day is November 8th, and then that voting by mail is October 18th. Alrighty, yeah, so thank you all so much. Yeah, and be sure to follow us on social media and through our website. We try to make sure that we put all of any voter registration and voter related information, especially civics engagement on there. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to actually start with a question for Neka first. As I said, Neka works at the Maryland League of Conservation Voters and has been out putting miles and miles on her shoes, going door to door and knocking and trying to get people registered and organized. Neka, where is the best place for people to get information about candidates and what their positions might be? So if I have my ballot and there's all these names on it, how do I find out about those candidates?
Yes, there are a myriad of resources. It's the 21st century, so we have the internet. We have a host of a host of resources about where candidates stand on their environmental positions on our website at marylandlcb.org. We have videos of forums that we've held in the past. Our 2022 scorecard is out, so you can check that out and see what current legislators who are running for re-election have done and see if that's aligned to your principles. We also have our endorsements page that will show you the candidates that we've handpicked personally that are environmental champions. And then there are other resources. Organizations have voter guides that they pull together where they synthesize information for you. The League of Women Voters has an excellent voters guide that gives you the policy positions of every single person on the ballot, from the top of the governor to all the way down to your most local races, your Maryland General Assembly, County Council, all of those things.
Thank you. Eris, I wanted to talk to you. This is the first time in 75 years that every state office and member of the General Assembly is up for election. So it's an unprecedented, at least in all of our lifetimes, election cycle. And yet there's some concern about low turnout. Your organization reaches out specifically to youth. And what is your sense? Are younger people really understanding the importance of voting? Are there things that we can do to help them understand the importance of it? Tell us a little bit about what the young folks are thinking now around elections.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this a lot sort of during the 2020 presidential elections, that a lot of young adults, even my peers sometimes, whether that be sort of on social media or through different conversations, would say, you know, this stuff, it doesn't matter to me, maybe because I'm not at the voting age, or it's not going to have an effect on me. I think which is the biggest misconceptions about voting is that although we are young adults and these things may not necessarily have a direct effect on us, it doesn't matter. But that's not necessarily true, especially on the local level.
Great, thank you. Morgan, my question for you is, there's been a lot of conversation about challenging elections and whether or not the big lie from 2020, and so I guess my question for you is around voters, and how do we feel certain and that our vote is secure, that things are being done properly, that this is a legal election, and specifically in Maryland?
I think one of the important things to understand about how we run our elections are that almost all of our election officials are volunteers. They're normal people like you and I. They're our neighbors. And honestly, I trust my neighbors. And I really think that, you know, educating yourself, talking to people who you know who are, you know, veteran voters, if this is new to you, you know, reaching out to resources such as Eris just offered, or, you know, talking to Common Cause. We have a ton of resources as well. If you have questions or concerns, like I said, you can always call 866-OUR-VOTE. And we at the command center will do our best, you know, to escalate if needed or convey any information that could help. Yeah, but like I said, just speak to the experts. We know that our elections are secure. And I know we at Common Cause, and I'm sure other advocacy organizations are doing our best to ensure that our elections are safe and secure.
Excellent. And I will also put a plug in for the State Board of Elections, which is a really very functioning, very on top of it state agency, and they're doing a great job at making sure that it's safe and secure. Another question for you, Morgan, from the audience. When registering to vote, you indicated you need a state ID, either your driver's license or something. If you're already registered, do you need to have a proof of an address or state ID when you go to vote?
So if you voted before, you shouldn't need any form of ID. If this is your first time registering and you registered to vote by mail, and you did not provide a copy of your ID when you registered, you may need to show like a government issued ID, like your driver's license, an MVA ID card, that type of thing. But that's only in that specific situation. If you voted before, or if this is your first time registering and you're voting in person, you should not need to show ID.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Good to know. Neka, this is for you, a question from the audience. There's been a lot of media around the timing of ballot counting, right? And it was challenged by one of the gubernatorial candidates in court. When can we expect election results to be presented to us as final?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I honestly don't have the exact answer just because there's going to take time to count ballots. And what we saw in the primary was that there was a shortage of election workers. So that did cause a delay in ballot counting, as well as certain areas couldn't start counting their ballots after a specific time, until after a specific time. So it's really going to just depend on the number of election workers that we have, election judges, to actually count the ballots, and then when those folks can actually begin to start counting the ballots. Now, the good thing about the challenge is that there was a amendment or a rule passed that allows tabulation to begin. So we will be able to start pre-processing those ballots before the election day, before the primary. I want to say it was like 7-ish days after the election that we couldn't even touch the ballot. So I want to say, if I had to put a date on it, maybe like a week or so after the election, they should be certified, but your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, patience will matter, especially for those close races. Eris, that leads me to another question about, as Neka indicated, there's a shortage of election judges and people working the polls, and yet young people like 16-year-olds can also work it. Can you talk a little bit about that and why people should work at the polls, how they can engage, who do they call, that kind of thing?
Sure, yeah, of course. I definitely know in Baltimore City, we had a shortage of election judges. And with that comes a lot of different paid opportunities. So I've definitely tried to encourage young adults to make sure that you're participating as an election judge. I think it also gives like great insight for young adults into sort of the voting process from start to finish, especially in-person voting. So just making sure to encourage people to sign up is just one of many other ways to participate in the voting process, aside from casting your ballot.
And just again for the group, how do if I'm interested, do I contact whom? Is it my county?
Sure. So for Baltimore City, you would go through the Baltimore City Board of Elections to find that information about election judges.
Great. And then in the chat box, we've posted where you can go to sign up for election judges in other places besides Baltimore City. So there's a whole form that you fill out, but honestly, that we need people. So if you're even considering it, take a look at that. I know Morgan, Eris, Neka would be happy to talk to you about what that means in the role, but it's a great opportunity to invest in good government and democracy. So
absolutely.
Then, okay, my last, well, maybe not last, but one of my questions I'd like each of you to answer is, as I heard a great statement that Bloomberg put out, and Maryland LCV is very invested in fighting the climate change crisis and doing it in an equitable and just manner. And one of the things that Bloomberg put out there was that the most important action somebody can take for climate change is vote. I just thought that was so powerful, that who we vote for and who gets in office has more impact on our climate change than maybe even switching our cars or switching our diet. So really important to vote for environmental reasons and many reasons. So with that backdrop, and I'll start with Morgan, what are the 3 biggest things you believe every voter needs to ensure that they're prepared and ready to vote and are informed?
Well, I would say number 1 is to make a vote plan. So if you're on this webinar, you're like a third of the way there already. And then obviously with that goes stick to your vote plan so you ensure that your vote gets cast and counted. I would also say if there is an issue that you know is on the ballot that is especially important to you, try to do as much research that you can before you get to the polling place. If you're voting in person, of course, if you have a mail-in ballot, you know, you kind of have more time. But yeah, try to know the issue as well as you can. So you're not blindsided. I know the first couple times I voted, I walked into the booth and I was like, okay, President, Senator, I don't know what the rest of this is. That's not a great feeling. And then a bonus, bring a friend to the voting booth if you can. Spread the word. So that was my 4.
It can be a pretty fun experience. Neka, adding anything to what Morgan said, but also addressing what, you know, she had mentioned about information about candidates. How do we know where their information is trustworthy and it's legitimate and true? So anything you want to add to Morgan's top 3 things that people should be considering and about the misinformation that can be out there?
Yes, I'll tackle the misinformation first. So there's a ton of resources, right? And if you're like most people, you probably don't start thinking about the election until it's too late and it's already here. And that's where organizations like us come in, because we've been doing this work for you all along. So nonprofits are a great place to go. The official websites of candidates are a great place to go. Even if you think that, you know, they might want to like fluff their numbers or things like that, those places, those information sites are monitored. So they have to be accurate and honest. Another good way though to monitor information or just to learn about candidates is to actually get out on campaigns, you know, sign up and door knock or even phone bank, because that way you can sometimes have a chance to speak one-on-one directly with the candidate and hear from themselves where, you know, they stand, and you get to look at their literature, talk to other volunteers and swap stories and experiences that you've had. And that's something that I really think we forget about voting, is that it's a social thing we do together and a human experience. So we can share intel with the people we know, talk to people that you know, because everybody is looking into candidates and doing the research because everybody's voting. So you don't have to do it all alone or take it all on by yourself. You can talk to your friends, your family, your teachers, us, we'll talk to you. So that's a great place to get information. And as far as something important, I think to bring to the poll that I don't think Morgan mentioned is a phone. Not only will it help you research candidates while you're there, especially for those lesser known positions, but it's also perfect for taking the post-voting selfie that is obligatory and texting 5 friends to meet you at the polls.
That's great. I love that. I just had breakfast with a friend yesterday and she said, you know, so how are you voting on so-and-so in our district? So it was a great example of that. So Eris, if you have anything else you want to add to what people can do, but I also want to ask you a specific question about, again, young adults, because, and not just young adults, I think even older adults often come at the election thinking, I'm just one vote. It doesn't really matter because I'm just one vote, right? So why should I engage? So in addition to any advice about a voting plan for people, how would you respond to that about why a vote does matter?
I think in general, our votes contribute to just a larger majority. So, you know, making sure that one by one that we're casting our votes, whether it be on a local and federal level, really does make an impact, just to make sure that we are, you know, pushing the representatives and people that we want to see in local government. It really means a difference. So don't be discouraged just because you may believe or think that this one vote might not matter. I think that one vote contributes to a much bigger just majority in general. So yeah.
And you know,
I just wanted to add to that on the end too, that voting isn't the end, right? So you might feel like just voting the one time may not have a big impact, but these things take time. There's policy that has to get passed and accountability and implementation that has to get passed. So it's an ongoing and continuous effort. If you only vote the one time and then never follow up, never, write a letter to your legislator and tell them that you're paying attention to what they're doing or voicing your opinion, your actions are going to get lost. So you have to stay engaged. You have to make sure that after the policy is passed, you're electing officials that will implement the policy in an equitable and fair way. And that takes accountability and oversight on our part as citizens.
Excellent point. And also there's several scenarios every election cycle where a candidate got in by single digit votes. You know, they won by 5 votes, literally, or 4 votes, or maybe 9 votes. So, you know, ask those people, does 1 vote matter? Because it sure does matter. So you have to be engaged in this process, and your vote does really matter. So, Morgan, Eris, Neka, thank you. Thank you for the work you do first. We need you, and you're doing fabulous work out there. So on behalf of everybody that is engaged in the process, cares about the environment, and wants a better future of Maryland, we stand in gratitude for what you do. And then secondly, for all of you watching the webinar, please go to the websites we've put in there. We've tried to send you links to the how to vote, where to vote, how to get information on candidates, how to get engaged in being a poll worker or an election judge. So please get engaged with it. And if you need more information, just contact Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and we'll help get you wherever you need to go with it. But with that, happy Friday Digest. Eris, Morgan, Neka, thank you. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.